We'll call this meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
for all.
Brittany, would you call roll?
Yes. Matt Doublestein,
Present.
Andrew McGee,
Andrew's here.
Andrew's here. Okay. Sarah Ford,
Present.
Lauren Foley,
Present.
Danny Powers,
Here.
Dave Taylor,
Here.
Steve Milstead, not here.
Thank you. We'll look then to the agenda section. Any questions about the 2/8 meeting minutes? Is there a motion on the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the minutes. All in favor? Brittany, if you'd call that.
Matt Doublestein,
Aye.
Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Sarah Ford,
Aye.
Lauren Foley,
Aye.
Danny Powers,
Aye.
Dave Taylor.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, as we look at this evening's agenda, we'll note a couple of items A and B. Mr. Hughes.
Sure. So once we get under new business for 6A and 6B, those are both requests from individual petitioners to be docketed ahead of your typical schedule. So they are both involved petitions which were withdrawn, excuse me. And under your rules, once a petition is withdrawn, you have to wait 90 days unless there's a unanimous vote of those present at the next meeting to docket it sooner. Both items A and B have been requested to be put on your April agenda. So when we get to those, it's not a public hearing on either of those items. It's just a procedural vote. So there's no reason, if there's people from the public here to comment on the substantive, there's no reason for comments on that tonight. That will literally just be a vote on whether you want to reset them ahead of your typical rules or not. It takes a unanimous vote. It's completely within your discretion. And I'll explain each one when we get to them. And then on items D and E, if you so choose, those could be put together as that is is it D&E or C&D? There is D&E, development plan and a concept plan that could be put together for the same all points Anson Building 18.
Great, thank you. So we'll do that procedural vote on A and B. They're not removed. We need to vote on redocketing, correct? And then, so we do need a motion for D and E if that would be the will of the board.
I'll make a motion to combine items D and E into one item.
Second.
I think that one gets to Sarah. Brittany?
Matt Doublestein,
Aye.
Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Sarah Ford,
Aye.
Lauren Foley,
Aye.
Danny Powers,
Aye.
Dave Taylor.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public requests to speak on non-agenda items?
No, we did not.
Okay. And seeing no presentations or unfinished business, we move to new business. There's the request to withdraw and redocket item PC 21-005 CP PC 21-006-DP, the Paul property.
Mr. President, I see Brian Tuohy's here, and I'm sure he can answer questions if you have them. Brian, just give me the thumbs down if I say anything incorrectly. This was a petition that was filed, and after the petition was filed, we discovered that there are some remonstrators who, pursuant to a settlement agreement, were supposed to get some additional notice. And so as soon as we discovered that, Brian and I had a conversation, and I requested that he withdraw the petition and refile so that those remonstrators get the notice that's provided under the settlement agreement. This has not come before you. It's not been something you've discussed before. So the request would be that they can be reset for the April meeting. As I mentioned just a bit ago, for that to happen, that requires a motion by this board and then unanimous approval. If that happens, then they could be heard next month. If not, then they would have to wait, I think, to the June meeting would be their next time. The only, and I've spoken with the remonstrator, they're fine with it being heard next month as well. It was just a matter of making sure they got the proper notice. And so the request would be that this get a motion to reset it for next month's meeting.
Thank you.
To next month's meeting.
Everybody hear that? Sarah, I believe made a motion to redock it next month.
I'll second.
Motion a second. Any further discussion? All right, Brittany.
Matt Doublestein,
Aye.
Andrew McGee, Sarah Ford.
Aye.
Lauren Foley,
Aye.
Danny Powers,
Aye.
Dave Taylor.
Aye.
So that item will now be set to next month's meeting, and there's nothing further for tonight's agenda. Did I get it all correct, Brian? No other issues, right? He's giving me the shake of the head, so thank you, Brian. Are you ready for the next item, Mr. President?
Item B.
Thanks. Very, very similar. GDI Hockett, Starkey rezone redocket. Similar procedure, different posture of this one. So this one has come before you. You gave this no recommendation. It went on, and remember we had a split vote and we couldn't get Dave's vote that night. So it went split. Then you decided to vote for no recommendation. Before it got to council, it was withdrawn. They have now resubmitted. Jeff Jacob, I see he's here. Jeff, give me the thumbs up or thumbs down if I get anything wrong on this. The request, I believe, is the same in the petition. I don't believe there's anything different. It's the same request. They're just requesting that rather than wait to the June meeting as well, that they can be redocketed for next month. Again, it takes a unanimous vote and is completely within your discretion as to what you would like to do. Only real difference between this one and the last one is we have already heard this one where we hadn't heard the other one.
Can I ask a point of clarification? So you said it was pulled before it got to council?
Correct.
As a procedural matter, and tell me if I misunderstood, my understanding was that council needed to see it next before it came back to us. Is that incorrect?
That is typically correct. However, they withdrew their petition and are going to refile. And so it would come back to you if council made any changes to the petition as it was presented to you. But because they withdrew, it now has to start the process all over. They have to refile and resubmit. And so that's, I believe, what they're asking to do is the authority to be having refiled and redocketed for next month.
So favored it.
Sorry,
Right.
Sarah, I think you're breaking up a little bit on us.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So since they written as the way our vote out.
Yeah, so basically our vote means nothing now because they withdrew their petition. So, and the vote to redocket it would not be a substantive vote to approve it. It would just be to put it on the agenda to reconsider. But it's not required. It's totally within your discretion. So if your vote would be the same and you didn't want to see it before, you can choose that, or you can say, let's vote and let's hear it substantively, completely in your discretion.
And the normal procedure or normal rules would be 90 days.
Correct. Normal rules would be 90 days.
So the real
date of
real
withdrawal.
difference is, and it must be unanimous to see it for next month.
Correct.
Okay.
John, is it okay if Jeff Jacobs speaks at all? He's requesting to speak on this.
I'll leave that to the president if he wants to hear from Jeff or not. It's not really a public hearing, so you don't have to, but if you want to hear what Jeff has to say, it's not inappropriate.
I think certainly at this point, we better start with some conversation with the board. Anyone have any thoughts or input to share first?
I'm not inclined to, after 2 months ago, I'm not inclined to hear it sooner if there's changes. Just my opinion.
There's nothing different from the last time. I mean, there's nothing that they're presenting that's different, at least at this point in time.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
So if there's no motion, it follows our rules and it can be
Correct.
reheard.
Be reheard in 90 days. The rules say it requires a motion and unanimous approval. So if you call for a motion and there's not one, then it would just follow your typical rules.
Okay.
So this one will be redocketed for June then.
Maybe I should ask if there is one. Is there a motion? Hearing none, that'll be June. Okay. Item C, docket PC 21-002-ZA, Main Street Dental Zone Amendment. Is the petitioner ready?
Let me see if it's Mike Andrioli. I'm going to unmute you.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Can you hear me all right?
Yes,
Thank you. I'm sorry.
it's okay.
As I've mentioned previously, perhaps in front of this board, most of my work in front of a computer is by either TomTom or smoke signals. So I'm of the older generation, so it's a little bit more difficult. My name is Mike Andrioli, 1393 West Oak Street. I'm an attorney representing Nick Brower. Mr. Brower owns a 5-acre tract that is described in the staff report, right essentially on 650. And it is a tract that has limited use connected with it. There's some floodplain in the area. It's a larger tract than actually can be utilized or developed. This same particular tract came in front of this plan commission last year. And at the time it came in front of you, I was not representing Mr. Brower. He's being represented by another entity. And they sought a land use change to a general business classification, which in my opinion was much too wide, much too all encompassing, and had uses that could be in a general business classification that might otherwise not be compatible with that particular 5-acre site, given its location and the sensitivity of it as going into town. You have Harvest Park across the street and some of the other residential developments. At the time that you received it, it really didn't have a legitimate site plan. No building renderings had been finalized at that particular point in time. So at the time, the Plan Commission was left with, I think, little choice at that point to give it an unfavorable recommendation. We have worked with staff substantially with regard to the particular petition. And several things have changed. First of all, the zoning classification that we're requesting now from an ag classification is to your local business classification, which is a much more restrictive classification, a classification that really is well suited to this particular site, given its transition between some low density commercial and perhaps the residential districts that are a little farther to the east and to the north of this particular subject property. In addition to that, you now have a very detailed site plan for the layout of this particular property, for the use of the particular property. You have a detailed rendering of what the building is going to look like. And I hope you would agree with me that this looks more like a single family residence than it does a traditional commercial a business office. Essentially, Nick Brower's wife, Dr. Brower, is a dentist. She practices in Zionsville, Lebanon. This is going to be her office. She is going to locate there and have a dental office on this particular site if approved by the Plan Commission and the town council. we've worked with staff, and I think staff report to you is very detailed with regard to the commitments that we've made as to the use of this site. With most zoning classifications, there may be a mix of uses that would be permissible, but there may be some uses that would not necessarily want to be located at this particular site. Staff has outlined, and you have as part of your packet, a written commitment list that we will record and will run with the land that will limit the type of uses that will be proposed for this particular site. That will do a number of different things. It will assure the community that the actual use of this corner site will be as intended and will comply with the site plan and the basic uses that have been outlined within the written restrictions and commitments. That should give the Plan Commission, Town Council, and we believe the community a very secure belief that this will be utilized and essentially as a single structure. We're not proposing any other buildings on this particular site other than what the site plan shows. And in fact, we've limited the use of this site to that particular building and that particular building only, with no additional structures, save for perhaps a dumpster that will be enclosed and those types of things. Assuming that we receive a favorable recommendation and this goes on to the Town Council for approval and they adopt, we will have to come back for development plan approval for this particular building itself as part of your normal process and procedures. Ironically, given an agricultural use, staff has indicated, and I've come up with some additional uses that can be brought to that property as a matter of permission or permission with limitation. In addition to the ones that staff have outlined for you, a small kennel can be located there. Indoor and outdoor entertainment venues with certain limitations can be located on that particular site. None of those would be compatible or justifiable for this site, given the residential in the area. The other thing that the limitation of this particular building will do, it will limit and substantially reduce any traffic to this particular site by certain uses that could be brought to this particular property that would not otherwise be compatible with traffic or other concerns that residents might have in the area. So we would strongly suggest, staff has, that this complies with your master plan. And it complies because of the fact that we have provided a site plan. We've provided limitations of use of this particular building and ratcheted those uses down to a use that will be compatible in the area. We make sure that those uses will run with the land. Be happy to answer any questions that members of the commission might have, or be happy to respond to any concerns that are raised by the general public. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Staff report.
Staff recommends the following commitments be made as also agreed upon by the petitioner. The landscaping, architecture, and location of the building shall generally comply with the architectural renderings and site plan attached hereto and marked as Exhibit A. Notwithstanding those permitted uses, permitted conditional uses, special exception uses, or special exception conditional uses as allowed in the local business zoning district, the real estate will only be utilized for the following uses. A, medical office, including dental. B, medical and dental laboratories. C, engineering and architectural service. D, insurance agent, broker, and service. E, dwelling, single family. And F, counselor at law. Other than the structures set out and shown, no other habitable structures or permanent buildings of any type shall be constructed on the property.
All right, thank you. I have 2 requests to speak on this item. Please let me know there in the chat if you receive others. And we'll note that our rules give a total of 20 minutes to this, so we'll be watching the time a little bit. But first up I have is Dave Davis.
Hey, Matt.
Yes.
Before that, really quickly, let me mention, I want to do this for this docket as well as Item F, I will say that we did receive lots of emails from residents. Some of them were not able to public speak tonight. However, I do want to mention names and let everyone know that any emails that we did receive as staff, we did forward along to the commission. I know that I have received emails from Thomas Suley, Julie and Jim Leptic, Kate Popel, Laura, I'm sorry if I mispronounced anyone's name, Laura Aguion, Bill Kruger, and Dave Davis.
Thank you for mentioning that. And do know, at least for myself, make sure and read those. I know that our other board members do as well. We read those diligently. So Dave Davis.
I'm here.
If you'd begin with your name and address, and we'd love to hear from you.
Dave Davis. I live with my wife Consuelo just north of the proposed site at 4842 South Main Street. We moved in last October, so we're immediately adjacent. And I submitted these also in writing as was previously stated, but essentially we have several concerns, and then I have some questions if you'll indulge me. Obviously the clear concern is the potential impact on home values and property values. Obviously it's a predominantly residential area. Seems to us that this could set a precedent that could take off with all the ag property, ag land that's along this corridor and in the surrounding area. That, before long we could have a number of commercial properties interspersed amongst the residential areas. I'm not naive. I understand that there's going to be commercial properties, but this is completely surrounded by residences. So that's kind of the overarching concern. Some specific concerns that the area, that open space, I understand it's got some challenges, but one of the advantages of that is it's a naturally beautiful area along the Creek Valley, an area which we don't have a lot of those remaining. And I would hate to see that we start to develop every inch of space around there, and the potential impact on nature and the wildlife that inhabits the area. I'm concerned about the potential impact on the topography, drainage, and floodplain. What will the excavation and construction do to alter that? Obviously living right next to it. And then of course, obviously South Main Street is extremely busy, and what's the potential negative impact on traffic flow for the area? I don't expect that the single commercial entity is going to have a huge impact, but as I stated earlier, the precedent, and then more and more and more that gets developed along this corridor could have a huge impact negatively. So those are our primary concerns. I do admit, and I looked at the plan, it's an attractive building. So that's a positive from our perspective. But I do have some questions specifically. It being a dental practice, what are the proposed hours of business and days of business? Do you want me to give you all my questions, or?
Yes, if you would. If you give your questions, then
okay, all right.
Then
so
if the board chooses to ask of the
sure,
we'll do that. Yep.
So the hours of business, the days of business. I wasn't clear from the plan. Is there proposed lighting in the parking area? And if so, what assurances do we have that lighting will be off at night? Because that would be very negative from our perspective. One of the reasons we moved here was just the surrounding calm and beauty of the area. Very specific question. Can the design, particularly the parking area, be flip-flopped so that the north parking area and the dumpster faces 500 South on the south end? And if not, could a tree line and landscaping could a tree line and landscaping be added along the north boundary of the property between our property and the proposed building? And then finally, what assurances, I've seen a lot of conceptual plans in my day that look wonderful. The landscaping looks fantastic on paper. What assurances do we have that will follow what's proposed in terms of the architecture and in terms of the extent of the landscaping? That's it. I think I came in under 20.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I share several of those questions. We'll make sure we get to them as well. All right, next on the list to request to speak, Cameron Norman.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Cameron Norman. I live at 6090 Hardwick Drive. I'd like to thank the Planning Commission for allowing me to speak this evening. I am not a dentist. However, I am a private practice doctor that works at a busy location. So I do know the amount of traffic an office like this can bring on a daily basis. After rewatching the May 11th meeting online, where the Plan Commission gave a unanimous unfavorable recommendation, it is easy to see that the issues from May are still present today. Most importantly, during the May 11th meeting, the first question that was asked during open discussion was by Vice President McGee. He asked the petitioner about a secondary building that was located on the original site map. The petitioner responded with, quote, "At this time, we anticipate just simply having a dental office." So you can see the original unanimous unfavorable recommendation was made after determining the parcel of land would only house the single dental office. Looking at this evening's renderings, it is still only a dental office on this parcel of land. Nothing has changed in 9 months. There were a few other concerns that were present at the May 11th meeting. First was the issue of added traffic down Main Street, which the resident just spoke on. During the May 11th meeting, the petitioner stated that they expected 50 cars per day to this dental practice, or roughly an added 13,000 cars per year down an already congested Main Street. During the May meeting, Commissioner Taylor stated, quote, "Main Street is a very busy thoroughfare," end quote. He also mentioned that traffic is already increasing with the building of residential subdivisions along Main Street. Traffic along Main Street is only getting more congested, and added commercial business will only make this worse. The Whitestown Comprehensive Plan, as found online, states that commercial businesses are generally, quote, "adjacent to roads that can accommodate greater volumes of vehicular traffic, such as Whitestown Parkway," end quote. Main Street does not fit this description. The second issue that hasn't changed in 9 months is the intersection of Main Street and County Road 500 South. President Doublestein described this intersection as, quote, "a very scary location," end quote. Commissioner Powers and Ford also voiced concerns regarding this already dangerous intersection. A commercial business in the northwest corner of this intersection will only make this more dangerous for the residents of our community. Trees along the eastern edge of this property, as seen in the proposed site map, will only continue to reduce visibility as vehicles turn south onto Main Street. There are plenty of other safer locations in our growing community to accommodate a commercial dental office. The third issue from the May 11th meeting that hasn't changed in 9 months is the residential feel of this area. Commissioner Ford stated that this area has a, quote, "rural residential charm," end quote. She went on to mention that this, quote, "rezone doesn't make sense. It defeats the purpose of what we try to accomplish with residential and business," end quote. Commissioner Taylor voiced his concerns for making this area more commercial when he stated, quote, "doesn't make sense. It's plopping a commercial building right down in the middle of a residential community, end quote. Many residents moved to this area so there would be a divide between residential homes and commercial business. A commercial dental office does not work at this location. The Whitestown Plan Commission has a huge responsibility in shaping our growing community, and I do not believe they can ignore the issues at hand and rezone this parcel of land from agricultural to local business. The issues that carried a unanimous unfavorable recommendation during the May 11th meeting are still present today. Therefore, I would expect the Plan Commission to vote in the same manner. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Are there any other requests to speak on this item?
I have received none in the chat.
All right, thank you. We'll then hear closing remarks from the petitioner. And Mr. Andreoli, if you were taking notes on some of those questions, perhaps there's any of those that you could answer here. And then if we have more,
Thank you,
we'll
Mr.
ask.
President. Let me see if I can answer some of the questions. The hours generally are going to be from 9 in the morning to 6 in the evening. I don't think she's anticipating having any Saturday hours, but if they would be, they will probably be morning to early afternoon. But at this point, there are no Saturday hours contemplated. Taking some exception to some of the comments made by the callers, specifically the gentleman who lives immediately to the north, who's probably the most affected. The site plan is being proposed, and we will have to comply with that particular site plan, including its location. We're not planning to take, and we would certainly be willing to make a commitment that outside of the area that we're going to be placing the building as shown on the site plan, we're not wanting to remove any other vegetation on the particular site. We want to keep whatever is there now. We're not interested in going in and modifying or changing the wooded feature of the property, specifically as it relates to the gentleman to the north. In addition to that, and we haven't gotten to the development plan stage, but we would certainly be willing to have a discussion with the owners that immediately moved into the north regarding perhaps additional plantings and this, that, and the other. Your zoning ordinance requires a number of plantings. As to how this thing will be enforced, that's why we have written commitments that were proposed that were not proposed before, to make sure that the actual landscaping and site plan is adhered to, and that we're not going to be able to make any changes. If we come in at the planning stage from the standpoint of a development plan, and we have a substantially changed site plan, we're not going to get approved, and we shouldn't get approved because we haven't complied with our written commitments, which are enforceable strictly by the town of Whitestown. So that's the one advantage that you have with this particular site as it relates to that. Not at the development plan stage yet. We aren't in a position to really commit to any specifics with regard to landscaping, but we would be willing to do that with our immediate neighbor and come up with a landscape plan that we could work through when we go forward with the development plan approval. There's going to be traffic at this site. There's going to be traffic at this site if it developed in any of the number of uses that this property carries currently as an agricultural zone property. It would have traffic if it's a kennel. It would have traffic if it's a slaughterhouse or a plant nursery or a roadside produce stand or an outdoor entertainment venue. All of those are permitted uses in the ag zoning. Somehow, I think members of the general public are forgetting that this isn't a residentially zoned parcel that we're seeking to put in a commercial parcel. It is an agricultural parcel that we're seeking to limit in terms of the commercial use of it with one single structure, and that's all that will be located on the property. So the advantage to the community is we know what we're going to get with this particular site. We know what we're going to get with this particular property. We know that only a very small portion of the site, total 5 acres, will have a building and accessory structure on it as being proposed. so that we're not going to worry about this morphing into something that it is not. And I think that was a genuine concern before with the general business classification. As it relates to the enforcement mechanism, I can let Mr. Hughes talk to that on behalf of the board. As far as the enforcement mechanism, I don't know if Mr. Hughes has seen my written commitments that I proposed, but they're nothing short of draconian in terms of one must comply with those written commitments. If this would receive a favorable recommendation, town council would adopt it. So quite to the contrary, we believe this is a very appropriate site for this particular use. If this was zoned residential, perhaps not. But it's not zoned residential, it's zoned agricultural with a number of different uses that are permitted as a matter of right in this site. So what we're trying to suggest, and hopefully to the public will understand, is that the proposed site that we're suggesting for this particular piece of property will be a much better site in the long run and will be compatible with the needs of the area moving forward. As far as the architecture is concerned, we will not be able to change this architecture. And we're not proposing to do that, obviously. In fact, the commitments limit our ability to go ahead and change the architecture and substantially come in with a bait and switch. That's the whole point of written commitments that would carry forward with this particular property. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Then we'll close the public hearing and ask for any questions or comments from the commission.
I just like to make a clarification on a question that I asked in May. It was in regards to a second building that was proposed on the site, not the dentist office. The second building on the site plan back from the May meeting had a school in there, and the petitioner had mentioned that they did not have that business lined up anymore. So it was not, my question was not in regards to the dentist office.
Yeah, and quite frankly, we're not going to have any more buildings on this site. What we've proposed is the only building that we're proposing on site.
Well, this is a big difference between what was presented the first time. There's a big difference between general and local business. That first plan was not in any place to be approved. So I do commend you for bringing it back in much better shape. I think it's also important to note, I haven't heard anyone note this yet, that this does sit in a special development area, which means that things like retail uses could be put on it. In fact, I think when you look at the larger comprehensive plan where they have pictures included, just like mock-ups of CVS is sitting there. So I do think, you kind of have to think through which option is the best option for this type of a location. And I don't think it was outlined that this particular area does sit in the special development area. I have a concern, as do a number of folks who wrote in that weren't able to speak tonight about that intersection. And if there are any plans, maybe Mr. Powers speak to this, any plans to do any adjustments to that intersection. That is a tough intersection right there, just to see. And I know there's no, you can't just like, but I get that, but are there any plans in place to at least address the fact that that intersection is looking to navigate?
Thank you, Sarah. That is a tough intersection. Since the last time this parcels came, we've looked at this intersection for two different controls, being a signal or a roundabout. Both would fit, and then it's very tricky from just the terrain, the small graveyard on the southwest side. And also, we may not realize it, but the main street south of 500 South is also in Boone County's jurisdiction. So we do not even control any of the right-of-way south of this intersection. So there's a lot of issues. So I like this site plan here because one of the things I would like to require if we do
move forward with motion is to require dedication of additional right-of-way and easements that we would need to move the significant utility infrastructure that's there and to provide the right-of-way we needed to whatever we decide for the improvement of this intersection. Like I said, we've looked at it and now we know we've got our idea what we want and we are looking at funding options. But with that is we still need to get the right of way to do the improvements. And so this would lock down that northwest corner and that'd be a big benefit to moving forward with the improvements. And I just want to say also is I like this site plan better than the previous one that was submitted because there was 2, potentially 3 buildings before, while this is only 1 building. I think it's got a much smaller impact. And when this would come back for development plan, we'd also require them put in a passing blister on the east side of Main Street just to add that safety.
Go ahead, Matt.
I'll speak, since we're speaking about transportation, and since we got Mr. Powers talking about that, in the intermediate, we've also had a lot of conversation about roads to pull traffic off of 650 that I think are relevant here as well. Is there anything else that you might think are relevant? It would be relevant with some of the other development that we've approved or looked at in that time. There has been some of that conversation. Do you feel like that's relevant, Dan?
Sure. Yeah. So absolutely. So we, with our thoroughfare plan amendment we approved last year, it had always been identified that Main Street is a major arterial, which is our highest classification in town. And so we require such large additional right-of-way so road improvements can be done to widen the road or make improvements. With our thoroughfare plan, we also identified County Road 575 being a major arterial, which will help relieve Main Street in the future once those improvements would be made, because Main Street, like I said, there's a lot of difficulties in potentially widening this road. So when we looked at the overall transportation network, it made more sense. While this is going to always be a busy street, only get busier, that our 575 corridor is intended to take more of the traffic that would be coming from up north and help relieve some of this pressure that we see on Main Street.
Sarah, did you have some other things?
Well, I was gonna just mention the first gentleman, Mr. Davis, had asked about lighting, and lighting is something that we kind of discuss in the development plan process. So I don't know if we can make any, big statements about that, other than it'll be reasonable, have to be within guidelines.
I would like to ask the petitioner about that because the plan
Okay.
does not have any lighting, and he's said several times that they'd commit to that plan to be substantially similar. So I'm wondering if there is something about lighting in that intention, or if that is something that you intend to wait for development.
On this particular site plan, there is not, I think one of the members suggested, I think it's appropriate that that be handled at the development plan stage. Most of the lighting, to the extent we'll have any parking lot lighting, will be the down lighting, will be the lighting that will have to focus down. We may have to have at least some lighting that would illuminate the particular building just from a public health and safety standpoint, but it will be minimal. We can certainly, with regard to any landscaping lighting or those types of things, we can put those on timers and come up with landscaping lighting plans that will coordinate and perhaps limit the timeline. And we could even do the same with any building lighting, but I know there's going to be a safety component with that, especially in the wintertime. If it's a little dark by the time people come out, we'll have to have at least a reasonable safety lighting. But all of the lighting that we will propose here, given the nature of where this is located, will be the lighting that will not illuminate off-site, but will simply illuminate the areas downward from where the lighting will be. And we'd be happy to go ahead and work with staff with regard to that particular lighting to make sure that it's sensitive. I know the Browers want to be good neighbors to the extent that she's going to be practicing dentistry here. She doesn't want to alienate some of her potential clients and patients. So we will be working hard with regard to staff to make sure that the lighting arrangement will be compatible with the neighborhood in general and specifically to our neighbor to the north.
Thank you. I also have a question for perhaps for the town folks. I guess maybe I'll note a couple of things first. Mr. Davis is surrounded, it appears to me, by commercial. His neighbor to the east is a commercial entity. I believe the neighbor to the north also is a writing business. My memory was that we had many years ago, and I believe they no longer may even own it, but to the west was also to be a business use in an agricultural zoning. That was going to be therapeutic riding stable. I don't know if I don't know if they're still involved in that or not. Brittany, what is to the, do we have anything there to the west that is a commitment, or is it likewise zoned ag at this point?
So at this point, the property to the west is zoned ag. It is not, it's ag, it's currently used, it is owned by Morning Dove, it is vacant right now. And all the other, north is ag as well. And then we have Harvest Park to the east. South is ag, like Danny was saying, some of it does is controlled by county. So those are the surrounding uses. And I do want to mention one thing, Matt, to the comment that kind of was made about the lighting, is I think it got mentioned, just commitments and things like that. When they submit for their development plan, they are required to submit a photometric plan. They have to follow by what we have in the UDO, their photometric plan. We look at that to make sure that we don't have any lumens that are spilling over onto adjoining properties. We also review what types, if they have any light poles, the material, the type of fixture it is, making sure everything's downlit. So they will have to submit a detailed lighting plan that we review as part of their development plan.
I guess maybe the last thing I would just offer as by way of observation is just that we have a lot of these kinds of residential looking businesses that I observe around our community and surrounding ones, even all down into Oak Street in Zionsville, even on Main Street in Zionsville. I think of much of Carmel Drive and a lot of the businesses that remain there in old homes. Even the insurance agent and some others that go down into our own legacy core. I guess I feel as Sarah said, I think this is a dramatic improvement. I much prefer this kind of use than a slaughterhouse that wouldn't require our vote.
And I'm going to echo too. I think this is much better than previously submitted. The change from general business to local business, along with the permitted uses listed as part of commitment, medical office, counselor at law. And then I think the last commitment as well, that no other structures, no other habitable structures or permanent buildings constructed on the property. I think this is much better. And as you said, Matt, I see other examples of businesses such as these neighboring residential areas. It's not unusual.
It's hard for me to hear, from a direct neighbor that we're not super excited about it. I'd want to make sure that whether it's at the development plan stage or if it's appropriate to now, that the petitioner would really adhere to that desire to work on that northern boundary, the tree line, the landscaping, et cetera, with Mr. Davis. I think that's essential.
Matt, one thing I want to mention, it was mentioned here in the packet, was a community garden. I'm curious if that is in the works or if it was just kind of mentioned there. I'm curious what maybe the thoughts are on that, including that in the packet, because I didn't hear that mentioned during the petitioner's presentation.
Thanks for bringing that up. Mr. Andreoli?
Yes, I'm sorry, Sarah, I did not hear your specific question about.
Yes, it's okay. In the packet, it's mentioned that a community garden could be included, but I didn't hear that mentioned in your talk. And I'm just curious if there's what that might look like.
Talking about the garden?
Yes.
Yeah, they had an area that they had designated, and I believe it's probably in between the by the garden shed in that particular area. They haven't developed any plans, but it will be landscaped and green spaced. And it may be an area for people to actually sit outside or utilize either while they're waiting or otherwise. It hasn't been fully developed, but I know that they wanted to make that into a green space area and landscape it. It will not be used for events. None of those types of things. It won't be anything like that. It'll just be for the internal use of those that would be in the facility themselves, and perhaps some of their patients if they wanted to sit out there or sit in the garden area. So I don't think they've fully developed it, but I think it goes along with their commitment in terms of a landscaping plan and substantial compliance to this particular plan from what they show on their site plan. So I can't say any more to you about it than that, because we haven't really developed any more about it than that. I know it can't be anything that's organized to such an extent where they're going to have outdoor activities or anything like that, because that's not what's planned for this particular site. So I have suggested to them that it cannot be utilized for events or outdoor activities or those types of things. If it's a contemplation garden or something along that line, fine, but it's not going to be anything that's going to be formalized and utilized for events, in case members of the general public are concerned that somehow or another that area will be utilized for parties or events or anything like that. Not anticipated for that, specifically the opposite of that.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything further from the commission, or is there a motion?
I'll make a motion for favorable recommendation to town council with all three commitments listed in the staff report. Well, we didn't ask petitioner, but Danny, could you, or maybe Jonathan, did you capture what Danny's request?
Jonathan, what would be an appropriate recommendation for, dedication of right-of-way and easements? Even though we do not have that designed yet, we could come up with that in the interim while a development plan would come before us.
Yeah.
Breeze.
Freeze for everybody.
Oh, we just lost him.
I guess the first right Pacific. Sorry, am I back?
You're back.
Yeah, sorry about that. So typically I'd like to know exactly how much we want on a dedication. So the first question is the petitioner willing to agree to a right-of-way commitment? And then the second.
Maybe while he's unfreezing, Mr. Andrioli, can you speak to that willingness on the right-of-way? Is everybody frozen?
I hope not.
Yeah. I really love this.
I'm unfrozen the whole time until you need me to talk, and then I'm frozen.
Yeah.
Sorry. So just, I guess, first question is Mr. Andrioli okay, the petitioner okay with that commitment? Because we need them to be on board. And then the second question I'd have is, Danny, do you have any sense of a foot size that you would want in that area that we could say, to work together, but on at least a 10-foot expansion on the right of way? I don't know what you need. You probably don't know, right? You
I don't know, but
roundabout or signalized or what?
I would assume for a roundabout, because it'd be the worst case scenario of right away we need, and we could work towards this before it would go to council to get a hard footage. Typically we always require our right away per the thoroughfare plan, but being an intersection improvement, it's not quite as easy, since there'd be more necessary for that corner cut.
Mr. Andrioli, can you speak to willingness there?
Well, without some definitive number, it's pretty hard to do that and certainly commit my client. I might suggest to you that the site plan was laid out with the idea that we're going to have to do some right-of-way dedication in terms of the actual plan itself, in terms of where buildings have been located and those types of things. The other thing that we talked about that I can share with you is that we knew at some point there's going to be some potential road improvements down with the, at the intersection. And so if you look at the site plan, you can see that we've tried to move the building as far north as we can on that site, but not too far north that it's going to cause us to violate setbacks or cause concerns with our neighbor to immediately to the north. So we've tried to position it close to the center of the property. It's a 5-acre tract, so we should have sufficient ground when Danny is ready and the town's ready to try to get some thought process moving with regard to what they're going to do from an intersection standpoint. We should be able to be in a position where we're going to have to dedicate right-of-way. Your development plan approval provides for dedication of right-of-way as required to get approval of the site plan anyway. So you've got those hammers that you use customarily in order to get approval for site plans to make sure that appropriate road and street dedications have to be done at the time that the site plan's done. So it's very difficult for me to talk about numbers when we don't have any, but I know that we're going to be required to look at the dedication of right-of-way when we come in from a development plan standpoint. And we've tried to at least preliminarily lay out our site plan. One of the reasons why, as far as the site plan is concerned, we left a little wiggle room with regard to whether it would be complete adherence to it. We didn't know what the town was going to request from us with regard to right-of-way dedication or other things, so that the actual site may shift a little bit depending on what we need to do from a development plan approval. So that's why you leave a little wiggle room in that from a commitment standpoint to make sure that we can deal with the town in that regard.
All right, Mr. President, I'll rephrase my motion I'll make a motion for favorable recommendation right now with just the 3 commitments that are listed in the staff report. But I think we all know that same request will probably come with that development plan then.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Matt Doublestein,
Aye.
Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Sarah Ford,
Aye.
Lauren Foley,
Aye.
Danny Powers,
Aye.
Dave Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you all. Thank you for a new plan on that one. Significant improvement there. All right, moving on then to items D and E, docket PC 21-000 CP and DP All Points Anson Building 18. Is the petitioner ready?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Hello, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna try to share screen here. Just have a few slides for visual. Oh. Looks like I'm disabled.
You should be able to do it now.
Okay. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so hello, my name's Nathan Harris. I'm with the petitioner Duke Realty. Address of our office is 8711 River Crossing Boulevard, Indianapolis, Indiana. Thanks for hearing us tonight. Tonight we are presenting our concept plan and development plan petition for All Points at Anson Building 18. It's located within our All Points at Anson Business Park. Just a brief overview of the park. As you can see, our site that we're talking about tonight is located along Anson Boulevard and just south of County Road 450, directly across from PTS and just south of Express Scripts building. It's approximately an 8.8 acre site. This is a current land use map. We're located within the Anson PUD, and within that, we are located within the Interstate Commerce District. Here's a site plan for the site. Building's approximately 119,000 square feet. We've positioned the building so that the front of the building faces County Road 450. All of our docks and future trailer staging, will be at the rear of the building. There's a truck access point off of Anson Boulevard. A cars only access off of Anson Boulevard. And we have this connector road around the backside of the building with a cars only access point that aligns with the Express Scripts site. We've also planned for future car parking if needed by our client. Here are a few pictures of the building, some renderings. It's a little bit hard to see, but this face of the building, the corner that kind of faces the intersection is kind of at a 45-degree angle. So that's to face the intersection. The building colors and scheme are pretty similar to our Anson Building 4 that's located on the south side of Albert S. White Parkway. Here are some elevations as well, just to kind of give you a feel for the building. And with that, hopefully would like to receive approval tonight. As I stated earlier, we're located within the Interstate Commerce District of the Anson PUD, which allows our proposed industrial use. The building meets all development standards per the exhibits E and F of the I-65 PUD ordinance, and a review of the agenda shows that the planning staff recommends approval of our concept and development plan. And with that, I'll take questions if you have any.
Thank you. Staff report.
Staff recommends WPC approve docket PC 21-003-CP, all points Anson Building 18 concept plan, and docket PC 21-004-DP, all points Anson Building 18 development plan.
Do you have any requests to speak on this item?
I have not received any requests to speak ahead of time.
Give it just a moment.
I've received no requests in the chat box.
All right. Any more? Any at this time?
No.
All right. Are there any further remarks from the petitioner?
Not unless there's questions from Plan Commission.
Thank you. Then we'll close the public hearing and open to questions and comments from the commission. Mr. Harris, I believe recently I noticed a for sale sign at an adjoining property. I don't know if that's relevant to any conversations that perhaps you've all had with neighbors.
Which property are you referencing?
I believe directly east.
Directly east of us is the Anson Acres Park. And then I think directly east of that is Paul's site, which I think was just removed from the petition.
Got it.
This evening.
Got it. I understand. Okay. Is there a motion or any other discussion from the commission?
I make a motion to approve docket PC 21-003-CP, all points Anson Building 18, and docket PC 21-004-DP, all points Anson Building 18.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Brittany?
Matt Doublestein,
Aye.
Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Sarah Ford,
Aye.
Lauren Foley,
Aye.
Danny Powers,
Aye.
Dave Taylor.
Aye.
Passes. Thank you. Moving on then to item F, docket PC 12-007ZA Park 130 Giles property. Is the petitioner ready?
Ross, I've unmuted you. If somebody else, let me know.
Larry Sigler.
Yeah, Larry and Andy there is waving in the screen. He's going to be leading our presentation tonight.
There, I think I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
And Brittany, there are two Larry Siglers as well. He must have
I
signed me up.
realized that now, Andy. I wasn't. I
No,
see
that's
that.
yeah, that's okay. So if you can unmute his other one as well. Good evening, everybody, Mr. President, members of the commission and staff. Good to be with you this evening. My name is Andy Baroker. I represent the petitioner, Park 132 Lord Realty Holdings Group in this petition tonight to rezone, and I'm going to try to share my screen. Will you let me share my screen, Brittany?
Yes, we will let you do that.
Is my screen up?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Again, Andy Baroker with Faegre Drinker, offices at 600 East 96th Street, Suite 600, Indianapolis, Indiana. With me is Larry Sigler with the Peterson Group, who is our project manager and construction manager for this project, and Ross Nixon with American Structure Point, who is our engineer and architect, who will be able to address any questions that you have regarding this. Let me just go briefly show you an overview. Here's a photo of where this property is. Park 130 Partners 2 is the, in essence, same entity that has redeveloped the property just to the east of this in Park 130, a 5-building industrial park off Commerce Drive and Indianapolis Avenue. 4 of the buildings are completed, so it's been a successful endeavor, and the developer is reliable and gets things done kind of developer. So this property is immediately west of that. Park 130 would be captured Park 132. We request approval to rezone this approximately 133 plus acres of agricultural land owned by different members of the Giles family in 5 different parcels, but 2 large chunks, totaling just over 133 acres from R3, which is medium density, single family and 2-family residential, and agricultural, to I1 light industry for a light industrial development similar to Park 130 that has been constructed. 4 of the 5 buildings have already been built. Of the 133 plus acres, 83.4 acres of the total area are developable. 42.5 acres are not developable due to White Lick Creek, the Eder Ditch, and related floodway and floodplain areas on the property. These areas have presented problems to other groups who have tried to develop this property. Mr. Sigler has had numerous discussions with the county surveyor on the floodway and floodplain water issues regarding White Lick Creek and the Eder Ditch, and how to handle or address those as part of the part that is developable. Site improvements will include rebuilding parts of County Road 550 South and County Road 475 East, as well as rebuilding the intersection of those 2 roads. Let me try to just show where those roads would be. That's right here. I'll show better to see it right here. This is that intersection there. To connect the park's entrance to Indianapolis Boulevard, separate from the residential areas, long-term, separating those from the residential areas to the west, and allowing eventually County Road 475 East to run south all the way to connect into future Ronald Reagan Parkway, as well as Whitestown Parkway, a new major north-south thoroughfare west of I-65, which is much needed for this growing area. Along with extending water, sewer, and stormwater lines throughout the project, we've also proposed over here in this area a nearly 13-acre compensatory water holding basin that is both for stormwater as well as buffering the building 1 right here from the residential areas on Sanders Court. Petitioner proposes to build 3 flex office and logistics warehouse buildings totaling over 1.1 million square feet on 3 separate lots. Ceiling heights would be anticipated to vary from 28 to 36 foot clear. Petitioner intends for the park to be similar in this and other aspects to the developer's current Park 130 development immediately east of this land. Again, where 5 buildings have been approved, 4 of those buildings have been constructed, with the last one to come shortly. The intended occupants are companies operating warehouse, distribution, logistics, and light assembly businesses, possibly including light manufacturing. Most companies would only operate during normal business hours. The anticipated traffic to and from the buildings will be similar in nature to other light industrial, flex office, and logistics warehouse buildings in the Whitestown area. Petitioner has completed due diligence on the property to date, including geotechnical studies, phase 1 environmental site report, survey, and title review. And our closing and acquisition of the property is contingent upon finalizing the tax abatement after many discussions with the town, as well as this rezoning approval. Construction would be anticipated to commence in spring 2022, with full build out anticipated to be completed in 2026. Again, going to sort of the images, the area overview, right here, the subject property you can see fairly clearly. Here's County Road 475 South, County Road 550 East, right up here. Again, the goal and the long-term goal, I think, is relative importance to the town to get 475, this road right here, open as a major north-south thoroughfare from Indianapolis Boulevard up to the north to Whitestown Parkway, to open up some of this area and improve transportation along this corridor. I'd like to show and just reflect the site plan as proposed. And from this, you can see buildings 1, 2, and 3. Buildings 1 and 2 obviously being larger. Compensatory water storage, this area right here, 12.76 acres, which we believe would help alleviate overflow and flooding from White Lick Creek at some point, but a pretty large detention basin, again, both to address water storage and runoff, as well as buffering this building from Sanders Creek and the 7 residents in that cul-de-sac, 3 of whom are on the east side of the cul-de-sac and would be facing this area. Water compensatory storage as well over here by the Etter Ditch, a detention area here. And then this is building 3 down at this area. These buildings would connect and access off of 475, not 550. And then I wanted to share this just because this is the town's long-term thoroughfare plan in connection with Ronald Reagan Parkway. I'll show on my cursor, here's Ronald Reagan Parkway anticipated long-term to be constructed. The goal or the desire, again, long-term when that comes, is to have an access off Indianapolis Boulevard directly to 475 for the industrial or commercial areas, again, extending on down south to Whitestown Parkway, with a separate connector to 550 from Indianapolis Boulevard that would service residential areas both here and on further west, to the west of this area. So this is, it also shows floodway and floodplain. This is White Lick Creek. This is the Etter Ditch, showing that there are development hurdles on this property with sort of water today that we have been working with the county surveyor on and engineering on how we address those. That is my presentation. Larry or Ross, anything that you would like to add, or would you like to just defer to questions from the commissioners and the public?
This is Larry Sigler with Peterson. One thing I'd like to add is we have been talking with the town about temporarily maybe having some access up to 550 until such time as the 475 corridor is built out. The long range plan is to have all access off of 475, but there could be a very early stage. So I want to make sure that that's clear.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Brittany, and members of the commission. We appreciate it and are here to respond to questions and comments from the public.
Thank you. Staff report.
Staff comments. The rezoning process is a legislative act. Plan Commission will make a recommendation to the Town Council. Town Council will make a final decision. Because this is a legislative act, the Plan Commission can require that certain commitments be made as part of the rezone that will then run with the land. Plan Commission should maintain and enforce the Unified Development Ordinance to achieve the goals of the comprehensive plan. The Plan Commission should ensure the goals of comprehensive plan and transportation plan are met. Due to the impacts of future development, the applicant should continue to work with the Public Works Department to discuss necessary infrastructure and intersection improvements.
Thank you. I see 3 requests to speak on this item. Our rules do call for 20 minutes, so I'll ask you to be around about 5 minutes in case there are others who wish to speak later. I'll be keeping a timer here. First on my list is Jesse Cherry. If you'd please announce your name and address and then we'd be glad to hear from you.
I do not see them in the list of people on this meeting.
If you are in, perhaps your name is not on your screen correctly, perhaps raise your hand. Worth noting, as we see where that might go, as Brittany mentioned earlier, we did also receive a number of written comments and have read those as well. I don't see any hands raised either. Last call for Jesse Cherry. Okay, Larry Brenner.
Good evening.
Hello.
Yes, I do have a few things to say.
Thanks, sir. If you'd share again your name and your address, please.
Sure, it's Larry Brenner. I'm at 6190 South 475 East. We're just south of the this project. I did have some slides. Did Brittany or somebody have that available?
Yes.
Ah, there we go. And then
Larry,
as
you
I-
will have to let me know when to change to the next slide, please.
Sure, that'd be perfect. Go to the next slide.
Oh, hold on.
I'm going to try to be quick with these. First of all, this petition is precedent setting. How this plot of land is zoned will determine how all the plots of land that currently lie between present industrial zoned areas and existing residential areas could potentially be zoned and developed throughout Whitestown. Next slide, please. Okay, basically, as you can see with the blue line, this area needs to be a transitional area between the current industrial and current residential areas. And we're talking everything from 650 South, Whitestown Parkway, all the way up through the main part of town. So we're talking Walker Farms, Harvest Park, Edmonds Creek, Redwood, Golf Club of Indiana, all the homes along County Road 550 South, as well as homes on 475 East. Next slide. And here I overlaid one warehouse, not even the biggest warehouse out there, over top of part of Walker Farms, and you can see how many homes that actually covers up. The size of these buildings, you know, they're huge. And just due to their size and materials of construction, they are not the same character as residential homes in the neighborhoods. So transitional areas between the two, as you can see in this drawing, even itself, there has to be more than just a buffer. It needs to be actual transition to be proper planning. Next slide, please. Comprehensive plan denotes our neighborhoods and the petition's parcels as being in special development zone number 8. And like to say that the plan says that it's basically undeveloped, but that's really not true. The vast majority of the areas existing or zoned residential, which only leaves about 25% of the area for undevelopable area, or that's undeveloped ag land, but even 50 acres or so, that is the undevelopable floodways. So they're really limited what ground is available. And then complicating this is development zone 9 to the south, which half of that or more is gone because it's in Zionsville now. So it really pushes the idea of the gateway up into zone 8. That really makes sense because zone 8 already has a lot of the residential zoning and some civic businesses in it to make that transition happen there. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this shows the future land use map. And as you can see, for our area, it actually calls for less intense zoning and definitely not the I-1 zoning that the petitioner is requesting. And this is all after a lot of public input and looking at the geographical limitations and existing conditions. And generally, new development should be compatible with the surrounding area and provides appropriate transitions between densities and land uses. Placing the industrial uses within this area leaves no room for appropriate transitions to take place. Additionally, the town of Whitestown, the town council made a commitment in 2007 that there will be no industrial zoning west of the Eder Ditch. Well, their whole project is west of the Eder Ditch. And that was while they were doing the zoning for the Park 130 properties, the Veris partners, to the point where after that, they had proposed a building west of the Eder Ditch on the south end down by Whitestown Parkway, and that was not approved. And that commitment of no buildings west of the Eder Ditch should be enforced. Next slide, please. Okay. So our response to their attachment H, the requested zoning change is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. The area is supposed to have, it says it shall have even, an emphasis on high quality architecture, proportion, and detail. It should be a unique building, unique atmosphere. Well, they're only proposing the same concrete buildings as everything else. There's nothing unique about it. And it certainly isn't what was after in the plan, being high quality architecture, proportion, and detail. Again, it calls for less intense zoning in the area, not the I-1. And changing R3 to I-1 still puts the I-1 up against residential areas. So it doesn't change anything there. And we still think, again, that this is exactly why Whitestown Council committed to no industrial sized buildings west of the Eder Ditch back in 2007, because we have the Eder Ditch with its tree line and it starts to create that buffer and it leaves the field for space for transitional buildings. And second, the requested zoning change will have a negative impact on the current conditions and character of the current structures and uses, thus negatively impacting the homeowners' pursuits of happiness and welfare. As the one picture I had up there showed the enormous size of the buildings over top of houses. It is the duty of this whole process to protect the homeowners' happiness and welfare and safety. So going from industrial to the one residential house, back to industrial, and then more residential on the south end and across the way on the west side, you know, that's just horrible planning and does not really fit with the comprehensive plan. Next slide, please. The requested zoning change will not result in the most desirable use for which the land is adapted. Best use will follow the comprehensive plan. Subject property is better suited to less intensive zoning, and that was committed to earlier, and it provides room for the transitions that need to be required. It's just not more of the same thing that pushes the spatial problems caused by density and usage differences literally down the road where it would no longer be appropriately addressable. Number 4, the requested zoning change will negatively affect property values of the homes near the subject parcels. There's not a high demand of people wanting to live next to huge concrete boxes. Simple economics says that less demand for a given supply will cause prices to go down until demand equals supply. If the opposite was true, people would be lining up to have their houses next to industrial buildings. The requested zoning change does not promote responsible development or growth. Quite simply, does not allow for proper planning. Next slide, please. Okay, this is setting a dangerous precedent. The zoning is allowed to continue. The town can do much better. It's at a point now where it must decide how it will transition and smoothly integrate the industrial areas into town. And this just, what they're proposing simply isn't getting with it. Additional opportunities for small businesses or civic type projects should be included in the transitional area. Just they're lower, smaller in size, lower roof lines, which would make things much better. And next slide, please. So with that, we would like to see Whitestown become much more vibrant. Town where people want to live and say, yes, I want to live there. Places where employers and employees say, yeah, I want to go work there. Other people just say, yeah, I want to go visit there. Which means we need unique things. We need trophy assets, which if the Ronald Reagan was put together with a truly transitional area all the way through, then we would create that space. We would create those reasons for people to want to say they want to come here. If this petition is approved, that will not happen. Therefore, I would like to respectfully ask all of you to vote for an unfavorable recommendation for this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brenner, and also for the time you took to write in earlier as well. Thank you for that. Next, I have Bruce Thompson. We do have 10 minutes left in this time.
Okay, am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay, my name is Bruce Thompson. I live at 6145 South, 475 East. And before my comments, I have a question that I'm unclear on because of some information I received this weekend. This meeting is the petitioner's opportunity to have the planning commission send a favorable recommendation forward to the city council. Is that correct?
Yes, our role is to recommend or not recommend or unfavorably recommend. There are various options that we've learned more and more about from Mr. Hughes. That is the role here. As Brittany read earlier, the town council is the body that actually makes that decision. This body recommends.
Correct. I understand that, but this is the meeting that the petitioner is asking you to develop a recommendation to send forward.
Yes.
Okay. With that, my comments would be, as you're well aware, this development is working. I won't use the word in conjunction with, but somewhat simultaneously with the Becknell development immediately south. And that is both of these developments are phenomenally intrusive to residential in that there will be semi-traffic literally 50 feet off our property lines. And there is no room for any even remotely viable buffer zone. However, all the property owners on the east side of the road are in the rather anxious position right now of trying to negotiate with Becknell to buy our properties. That negotiation is in its infancy. And to be quite blunt about it, we're caught between not wanting to remonstrate this project, but at this point in time, if we don't remonstrate, we will lose our opportunity to remonstrate to the Planning Commission. So with that in mind, I would respectfully like to ask the petitioner if they would defer this process to the later date, preferably the April meeting. And that's the total of my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Is there anyone else who's requested to speak on this item?
I have received no more comments.
Still any?
No.
All right, very good. Then we will.
Oh, one just came in.
Oh.
John Cernak.
All right. John, we have about 6 minutes left in this portion of our meeting. If you could tell us your name and address.
Thank you very much for listening to my comments here. I'm at 6150 South 475 East, which is on the west side of 475 East. So I'm across the road from Bruce and north of Larry Brenner. So, I've lived in this area since 1999. It's a beautiful area. That 475 East is just perfect for, it's agricultural. There's some houses with larger lots, and it's just a great place to live and to, walk your dog or cycle, use the road every day. And I'm really concerned about the amount of traffic that this is going to bring along. I'm pretty sure if this goes ahead, and also the one that Bruce mentioned that's south of this one here goes ahead, it would almost be impossible to walk, to use that road for that purpose. I know we're talking about, we got to think about the future, but there's a lot of warehouses, and I believe there's a lot of other land that could be used for this that would not necessarily have the same impact. The other thing I'm worried about is or I would like to see a little bit of more consideration on is the Ronald Reagan Parkway. I know right now, when it comes north from Hendricks County, it would come up east of 475 East. And then we switch it over to the west side, and then we swing it back around to around my property. I'm going to be wedged between, and so is Larry Brenner, between Ronald Reagan Parkway and this main thoroughfare, which is going to be the 475 East thoroughfare for these different warehouses. To me, and I know I also talked to Larry about this too as well, it would make more sense to have that go up the east side of 475 East and connect that way. It maybe even could connect and cross over at the new 550 South I-65 interchange that's going in, and go that way. So I think that the planning committee should maybe consider that is a possible way, and that would be a little bit better with Larry Brenner's comments about a transition zone between the commercial to the east and then the residential to the west. The putting Ronald Reagan Parkway in there would be a much less intrusive way of doing that there. So I'm also worried about, property values. Like Bruce was saying, that the property owners on the east side of the road are negotiating to sell their properties. That may or may not go through. We don't know about that. But on the west side, right now, there's no intention of anyone to try to buy our properties there, at least not in the south of the one that we're talking about today. And as Larry Brenner mentioned, I think the property values are going to be devalued, and we're going to be wedged in between those two entities there, the Ronald Reagan Parkway and this new set of warehouses on the east side of 475 East. So that's my comments. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, sir. Jill, anyone else?
No, I've not received any more comments.
We will move on then finally to closing remarks from the petitioner. You've heard a number of items raised. If you'd have anything to respond to that and anything to close out your presentation, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, staff. Thank you, public input. I do want to respond to several of these. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Cernak are all south of our proposed development. Any of our traffic will go north to 550 over to Indianapolis Boulevard and the new interchange at 65. So we will not be creating truck traffic going in front of or adjacent to or in front of their homes. Our entrances will be well north of their homes. This is not in conjunction with or simultaneous with, it might be simultaneous, but we've got a purchase agreement with the Giles families that expires in only a couple of months. And so it's not useful or beneficial for us to extend for 30 days. We are not part of the Becknell group that's doing that, or we're not encouraging them. We're not in conjunction with them. at all. It's a separate process. And so it would be risky to extend or add additional time. These buildings, I would just say, again, knowing industrial development as I do, the largest is 672,000 square feet. The smaller one is 398,000 square feet, right? These would be dwarfed by what are truly industrial logistics warehouses like Amazon and FedEx and others in Greenwood and Westfield and other that are going up. I mean, they're modest by comparison, really less than half the size of most of the larger ones that are going up. And so while they are industrial buildings, they are not Amazon, or Walmart or FedEx monstrosities like you see at Mount Comfort or down in Greenwood. So there is, literally a third, 82 acres developable, over 40 acres not developable. That's because the Eder Ditch in White Lick Creek can't be touched and won't be bulldozed. The trees won't be removed. They'll be preserved, probably enhanced for us doing stormwater maintenance and in providing utilities here to prevent the flooding and to better manage that resource and that asset. I can assure you that the Boone County Survey will sort of make sure that we do undertake those tasks and take very good care of that asset, and it will remain and be preserved by having a landowner sort of coordinating all of White Lick Creek as it goes through and Eder Ditch as they go through these areas. So we plan to buffer really well to the residences that are most impacted, that are to the west of us on Sanders Court, with water compensation area to address White Lick Creek flooding and stormwater detention and those kinds of issues. Again, I don't think we'll have trucks or traffic going south by Mr. Thompson or Mr. Cernick's house on the east side of 475 south of our project. There really isn't a good way to get to that. And then I would just say, really, this area has developed. North of us is I-1, east of us is I-1, south to 475 is Whitestown Parkway, which is all commercial. It's marked red in that area. So this area has changed, and with Ronald Reagan Parkway, it will continue to change. With a new interchange at 550 and I-65, it'll continue to change. If you bring or allow people or invite them vis-a-vis traffic or interchanges along the interstate, you're opening up an invitation and they will come. And there's demand for this project. So I appreciate hearing those comments and feedback from the public, and I'm happy to answer any questions along with Ross Nixon and with Larry Sigler. Larry, anything else to add?
No, you did wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll close the public hearing and call for questions and comments. I do wonder if, I guess I have two questions first for staff or for town folks. And one is just about the midpoint interchange and the relationship to this project. I know we're very close. Can anyone talk about access and traffic and how that relates to 475 in particular?
Sure, Matt, I'd like to chime in on that. With NDOT breaking ground on the midpoint interchange, whether anyone likes it or not, it's just going to completely change the traffic patterns along Indianapolis Road, 500, 475, because it will be outletting an interchange right here. So there will be a lot more traffic, whether this development would go through or not, just the nature of that interchange. With the development, they would be required to improve the roads of 550 and 475, which would be a great benefit, as they would need to be improved regardless with the additional traffic that the midpoint interchange will bring. So that would be a benefit to the town as well. I mean, there's going to be a lot of change one way or another just because of that interchange. And the Ronald Reagan Parkway alignment, whenever that happens someday, that is also going to play a big impact on this area and what could develop.
Thank you. The second question I had, and Brittany, I don't know if you will dig anything up, but there was mentioned a town council commitment in 2007. 2007 feels like right on that kind of bubble of timeline. I don't remember exactly when we were still Boone County or when Whitestown had taken some of this over. I don't know if you have any ability to speak to that. That seems like a relevant item.
So I actually just looked this up as once that comment was made by the resident, so I know in 2007, this was under Boone County's Area Plan Commission's jurisdiction. I went to our website and pulled a primary plat staff report from Green Park, which was originally the Park 130, what it was called when it went through rezoning. I found in the old staff report just a history saying there were commitments in ordinance 2007-10 by Boone County Area Plan Commission. Reading through that, it speaks about the segments of Eder legal drain, and says that it's landscaping is what I'm finding. Owners shall be permitted to remove dead or deceased trees, invasive species, that sort of thing. Those are the commitments that I am finding. I will have to contact Boone County for that ordinance. I don't know if John could maybe speak. I mean, if that was by the Area Plan Commission, kind of how things transferred when it got put into Whitestown, but.
Yeah, I mean, we just have to look at the particular ordinance and what it said, and I wasn't aware of it until this evening, so I don't have a copy of it. But we just have to kind of trace that through the process.
Could or would the town council have made such a commitment?
Well, it was through APC, so Boone County Area Plan Commission. It wasn't through Whitestown Council.
Yeah. My comment to that would be, I suppose they could have. I don't know that they would have, unless for some reason this was brought to their attention after the fact when it became part of Whitestown. I don't know. I wasn't around then.
I mean, but does that mean if it was done through APC, is it still relevant since it moved into once it moved into Whitestown's jurisdiction?
So, I mean, we covered the zoning now, so the relevance would really just be a question of, you know, if there was some action taken by the town on that ordinance, but no, it's not, wouldn't be binding on us because it's our zoning now.
I will say the staff report that I have pulled up, this is the only thing I could find in reference. But we would need to check. I mean, I would need to check with Boone County to see if there is anything else. This also doesn't look like it's full. It's exactly the property that it goes along with the full property that they are petitioning for the rezone. So we would need to reach out to Boone County and find out.
Would Mr. Seeler, in your diligence, and I'm sorry, I said Mr. Seeler because that's the name that's there, but I recall that that's not, forgive me, I'm sorry, it was Baroker.
Yes.
Was there anything that came up in your research on this, realizing that would be something that I think you'd need to honor if it does attach?
Absolutely, Mr. President. We've done the title commitment, the survey. It's not a recorded instrument. If Boone County APC did that in connection with a proposed rezoning for Green Park 14 years ago, that project did not go forward. That did not apply to the property. I represented Park 130 when we did the zoning for that park to the east of us. That was not raised then. It wasn't in the staff report. It wasn't, it was a different project. So it would have in essence lapsed. So it wasn't in the public record. It wasn't recorded. So it doesn't run against title. That ordinance, if it was a zoning ordinance or an approval with respect to landscaping and preserving Eder Ditch and talking about invasive species, would have addressed a site plan or a development plan around Eder Ditch, which there's no development there now. So probably lapsed because that development never went forward.
And
right,
just
thank you. Mr. Hughes, what thoughts would you have on that comment?
Yeah, and Mr. Broker's comments about it being recorded, I think, are highly relevant. That's, when they purchase the property, they're going to look at what's recorded and commitments that would have been made for zoning or other incidences would have been recorded against the property. So if there aren't recorded instruments, then it's unlikely that those, as Mr. Broker indicated, that those were adopted as part of a zoning plan or site plan. So it seems to me that his analysis is probably right on with respect to that. That there doesn't seem to be anything in the record that would suggest those were formalized beyond proposals.
Thank you. Those were the things I was concerned about up front. Anyone else? I guess I'd offer that I agree with Danny's assessment that this interchange will dramatically change the area over there.
I mean, I drove it a couple times today. I like to drive by and see what is this that we're looking at. And I also, looking back at the comprehensive plan, and this is where we've talked about, the comprehensive plan being a few years old now. I'm struggling with kind of why it was even set up exactly the way that it was based on some of the issues with that space. And so, when you drive that property, it's not outside of the realm of possibility to have warehouses there. And so, I'm looking at the comp plan and the special development areas and all of that. But with the changes that are happening there and the access, the access to the interstate and stuff, I think, it's not outside of the realm of possibility to put warehouses there based on what is already there. But I would certainly like to see discussion from other members on how they feel about that.
Sarah, you made me think about transition space too, because that was mentioned a couple of times.
Yes.
Mr. Broker, you talked about that water retention and things. I wonder if you could speak about transition, realizing that transitions can happen in smaller settings as well as large swaths of property.
Thank you, Mr.
I guess
President.
what I'm asking is, how do you envision the kind of transition that these residents, I think, rightfully are concerned about?
Yeah, so there will be landscaping plan as part of the site and development plan approval. I think more impacted are the Sanders Court neighbors up off 550 on the south side of 550. There are 7 homes in that cul-de-sac, 3 that abut or adjoin or that would look east towards our building. Again, we've put a nearly 13-acre detention area there. There will be some landscaping requirements. There will be probably a small amount of mounding between the water retention area and the building, and it's not a large building. So in part, we're going to help improve the roads and help improve their, if we can, with the staff, and we've talked with the county surveyor and staff about helping on some of the water issues that Sanders Court get from White Lick Creek, right? There's limited infrastructure or utilities there, such as stormwater, to help alleviate that. Having a 13-acre detention area immediately adjacent to them to help them with that water issue, I think would be beneficial. And so nobody from Sanders Court was on this call remonstrating tonight saying it looked too bad. So we will have buffering. There'll be landscaping there. We won't be a 30-foot wall or a sound barrier wall, because the light and sound on these buildings are just they're not significant any longer. They're not intrusive. They won't point towards the residences at all. I mean, they're just not intended to do that. And let me say that, we're the third people that the Giles have reached out to try to sell their farmland to, the third developer. So if this is denied, or a reputable developer that's already built 4 buildings just east of this in a very responsible manner and doing a good job, there are going to be others coming after us. And Giles want to sell the property, and there's going to be an interchange there. And so they're going to sell it to a developer of some kind. And it won't be for a music venue, most likely, or institutional expenditures. The town hasn't indicated any institutional interest in some uses over on this area. So again, we think this is a good use for Mr. Thompson and Mr. Cernick, who are south on 475. We haven't had discussions with them and haven't discussed what they need or what they would like to see. And again, I'm not sure they're going to be there long enough to really talk about or want landscaping if they're negotiating with Becknell to sell their homes to another industrial developer down there. So I'm not really quite sure how much buffering they would like to have, but we're happy to talk to them. But if they're going to sell to Becknell and not be there long enough to see the landscaping installed, I'm not sure what discussion we could have with them, but we're happy to talk with them and have a discussion if they plan to stay and they'd like to see some kind of buffering. Again, that third building is an optional building. It's so small in just, over 100,000 square feet. It's tiny enough that it will not be like the larger buildings to the north. And it may not be a building that we end up building after all, because it's relatively small. So that one to the south is a little bit, we don't treat it the same as the building one up to the north, because it may not even be built, at least not near term. Sorry to be long-winded in responding to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. That answers some follow-ups for me as well. Any other questions or discussion from the commission?
Hey, I'll just add, I mean, yeah, driving up and down Indianapolis Road, what is already existing north and south, which is the petitioner stated this would be east of their property. I mean, it seems like that's fitting right along with what's along Indianapolis Road already on that side of the interstate. So I don't have any questions.
Anything further, or is there a motion?
I make a motion to send a favorable recommendation to the town council, docket PC 21-007-ZA zone amendment, Park 130 Giles.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Matt Doublestein,
Aye.
Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Sarah Ford,
Aye.
Lauren Foley,
Aye.
Danny Powers,
Aye.
Dave Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you. Items G and H are related but separate. Item G, docket PC 21-008 DP, SCP MS multifamily. The petitioner, ready?
Yes. Can I share my screen, Jill?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, members of Plan Commission and Mr. President. I will try to keep it brief as possible tonight. Let me just get screen mode. I am Liam Sawyer. I'm here presenting on SCP multifamily development located at 5875 Perryworth Road on the MS Communication site. I am from Kimley Horn. Our office is located at 250 East 96th Street in Indianapolis, Indiana. With me tonight is Will Zink from Strategic Capital Partner. He is representing the developer for the project. So as noted, and I should mention that this went to concept plan, I believe, on the December 20th Plan Commission and received approval there. So this is some information the Plan Commission has seen already, but as mentioned, the site is on the MS Communication site, just to south of Glasswater Creek, to the west of Gateway Drive, and then to the northeast of Perryworth Road. And then just the proposed scope is to develop a 3-building, 216 unit multifamily development on a 10.6 acre property with an associated amenity center, access drive, parking areas, and utilities to serve the building. Then as part of the project, Hemlock Drive will also be extended southward to connect New Hope Boulevard to Perryworth Road to provide a disconnection for traffic. Moving on, this is just kind of an aerial view of what I just described. You have Glasswater Creek up in the northeast corner, just south of New Hope Boulevard. Our project site is directly to the south with the 3 buildings. And then Hemlock Drive in purple on this slide will connect south and kind of swing to the west and connect with Perryworth Road, with everything in the green remaining to be developed on the MS site. And then this is a slide just highlighting our particular site for the SCP multifamily development. You can see it's 3 buildings, 2 with the main face facing Hemlock Drive, and a 3rd in the southeast corner facing south and then east. And then the amenity center is about the midway point up the eastern property boundary, and then parking in the area with some detention on the south and east of the project. This is just kind of the bulk site summary. So as I said, the site is 10.6 acres with about 4.6 acres of open space. The site is zoned urban business. I will mention that on the December 3rd BZA meeting, we got approval to, or a zoning variance approval to have multifamily on a urban business zone parcel with a few commitments. One of those commitments was to lower the unit count down under 217. Just the way the numbers work out with 3 buildings, we ended up with 216 proposed units with 379 spaces, which ends up at 1.75 spaces per unit, which is meeting the required code. Then also per the UDO for a multifamily development, we are providing 45 bicycle parking. All this should meet the UDO for multifamily, which was a commitment, and also the other BZA commitments. As part of this project, as mentioned, it is the Hemlock Drive connection. So this plan basically shows all the major streets and other boulevards in the area. This dashed line represents Hemlock Drive with the Glasswater Creek, and then our proposed development, and then the planned 65, 550 South interchange, and then the 575 East extension. So this is to highlight that Hemlock Drive is kind of a key connector for the town as all this other development comes on. And we also wanted to highlight that in the Whitestown thoroughfare plan, a connection in this area was proposed between Gateway East Drive and Perryworth Road. Hemlock Drive extension will provide this connection. So this is just an excerpt from our traffic study saying that after we did our analysis for this project and the extension of Hemlock Drive, we are not expecting any significant impact on area traffic conditions. And then it also showed that the proposed improvements, the stop conditions and intersections are also appropriate and won't cause any negative impacts. And then we also wanted to highlight that for this analysis, looking at it, the SCP multifamily development, the grand majority of that traffic is expected to go what would be south and west on Hemlock Drive and use Perryworth Road, as it is the most convenient option for them to get really anywhere in town. A few excerpts from the staff report. As I mentioned, per the new UDO, multifamily housing was not permitted use, but the applicant, we were approved for use variance to permit multifamily on the site in question. And then also staff is providing a favorable recommendation for the proposed development. And then just a few more items on the development plan. These are the proposed architectural elevations showing the look and style that we are going for on this project. And an amenity center will have similar styles as well. Then one thing I wanted to highlight in particular, this is the proposed landscape plan. And this area right here with the parking that is facing east towards neighborhood, we are going above and beyond the required code minimum landscape to provide landscaping that will screen any potential headlights that might have an adverse effect on the neighborhood. So that is something that we are providing just to be good neighbors and make sure no headlights are going into people's front windows. And then this is the next item, but in sake, I guess, of time and brevity, I will present this and just keep my next presentation brief. But this is the primary plat that was required, showing the proposed property lines and easements for both the SCP multifamily site and then the remainder of the Hemlock Drive intersect or Hemlock Drive extension that was reviewed by town. And this was also provided a favorable staff recommendation. So in quick summary, on December 14th, 2020, the Whitestone Plan Commission approved the concept plan for SCP multifamily site, and staff is recommending approval for both the development plan and the primary plat. That is all we have tonight, and we will be happy to answer any questions from staff, members of the Plan Commission, or from the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff report.
Staff is providing a favorable recommendation for the proposed development plan docket PC 21-008-DP. Although staff is providing a favorable recommendation, if the Whitestone Plan Commission recommends approval, the following conditions should be placed on the motion. Approval, a motion of approval needs to be contingent upon the SCP MS site primary plat and secondary plat approval.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who has requested to speak on this item?
I've received no comments.
Just a moment. Jill, still anyone?
No.
Thank you. Petitioner, do you have any closing remarks?
No, but we will be happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you. And we'll close the public hearing and open for questions and comments from the commission.
I just have one question about the landscaping along the northeast corner, the parking lot. Could you just elaborate a little bit more? You said extensive, but could you just give a little bit more description?
Yes, Andrew, it's going to be basically shrubs and bushes that are at a height appropriate to block any headlights. It's going to be very similar to what we ended up with at Glasswater Creek just north. I do not know the exact species off the top of my head. I could figure that out, but this has been reviewed by staff as being appropriate as well. So it's basically more dense bushes and shrubs that are really at appropriate height to block any headlights that might be going to the east.
What's that specific height?
I would believe it is around 3 to 4 feet, I think is exactly. And this is above because the curb is also below, but I would have to check my landscape plan to fully know that answer.
That sound right to you, Brittany?
Yes.
So this backs up to the park, right? And there's a number of trees there. It looks to me like you all are leaving some of them. Is that true?
We are leaving the grand majority of the trees that are on that eastern property line. So on our plans, we have marked those to be protected. There is a few different easements that run up and down the eastern property line that kind of make it not undevelopable, but it's better for us to leave as many of those trees in place as a buffer. And then there's also a detention area just to the east of our project that will also separate the project from the eastern property line as well. But the grand majority of the existing trees are remaining, except where we had to connect utilities through them.
Thank you. Anything else from the commission?
Just like to chime in, Matt, that Hemlock Drive is an important connector to help facilitate the traffic from the neighborhoods down there to get to Perryworth Road, and that'll help relieve some pressure off Main Street. We are currently under design and are planning on widening Perryworth Road. So this will play in really nicely to help facilitate that traffic. And it also help get pedestrian connectivity from New Hope down to Perryworth into down by the shops.
Thank you.
This is a procedural question. Did we combine G and H for the agenda in the
No.
beginning?
No.
We did not, so we need to do G and then do H separately.
Okay, that's why, yeah, I thought we didn't combine those.
Is there a motion or anything further on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve docket PC 21-008-DP SCP MS multifamily with the condition, I'm trying to get back to it, sorry, switch on screens. Contingent upon SCP MS site primary plat and secondary plat approval.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Brittany?
Matt Doublestein,
Aye.
Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Sarah Ford,
Aye.
Lauren Foley,
Aye.
Danny Powers,
Aye.
Dave Taylor.
Aye.
Item passes. We then have the primary plat, item H. Docket PC 21-009 PP SCP MS property. Do you have anything to add from the petitioner?
No, I do not. I will just, you guys remind or say staff has provided favorable recommendation for this petition as well. And they're happy to answer any questions about the primary plat.
Thank you. Staff report?
Staff recommends, if I could find it. Staff is providing favorable recommendation for the proposed primary plat located between New Hope Boulevard and Perryworth Road and includes proposed Hemlock Drive and Whitestown for the SCP multifamily site, Common Area 1 and Hemlock Drive right away.
Thank you. So anyone who's requested to speak on this item?
I have not received any.
Give it just a moment here.
I have not received anything in the comment box.
Great. All right. Thank you. Anything else from the petitioner?
No, not right now.
Thank you. Closing the public hearing then. Any questions, discussion, or motions from the commission?
I think it may be fair just to say we didn't combine these items so the public fully understands that we did not combine these because this is not approval. This is for recommendation for or against that will move on then to town council.
No, it won't.
Oh, I thought, sorry.
So the reason we did not do these together, so this is normally we combine concept plan and primary plat. So for this, they had the development plan that is just for the multifamily site, and then the primary plat. So and they're having to go back on the MS site and plat out the Hemlock Drive as well as this site. This is also going to help divide it, divide the parcel. So when they go forward with development, it'll be easier for recording processes as well as GIS. So that's why we didn't combine the two.
I apologize. I read that too fast there.
No worries.
Yeah, that in layman's terms, it's just, this one includes a lot more property than the other one because it includes the extension of Hemlock that was mentioned as part of the other project, but isn't included on there. So that's the simple way to explain it.
I make a motion to approve docket PC 21-009-PP SCP MS property.
I second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Brittany?
Matt Doublestein,
Aye.
Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Sarah Ford,
Aye.
Lauren Foley,
Aye.
Danny Powers,
Aye.
Dave Taylor.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. I don't see any other business or announcements. Is there anything else, Brittany, or?
I do not have anything else for you guys. No.
I think there's 2 TIFs on there.
Oh, yes, there is. I'm just kidding.
Hi, Jay.
Thank you, Jill.
Did I not get the updated one? No, go ahead.
No, items I and J. Yeah,
I
so
don't have
we,
I and J, I'm sorry.
okay, so we have an updated agenda. So items I and J are two orders of plan commission for TIF bonds. The first is for Millhouse. The second is Home Field. I don't know if Nathan or if John kind of want to explain these. It's the same type of orders that we normally have from RDC.
Yeah, I can. So this is, if you recall, actually 2-3 years ago, we defined the Mauer Commons TIF, which was a large section as we went to develop the Rex property. This is kind of redefining those TIFs because we just picked a large area, and this is just making it more project specific to what the Mauer is. It's breaking out the Mill House for their current multifamily because we already have some obligations with it. And then it's just redefining the TIF on the Mauer property for the Rex development, which is the $135 million kind of mixed use development that's been proposed out. So it's really just cleaning it up. It removes some of the ground. The Hockett ground was included, some of it by the cemetery. That's not part of this project, and really just focusing it down. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's just taking it from one large TIF to two smaller TIFs and opening the other ground up that may not be needed to be TIFed as part of this.
Does it add anything?
No, it does not add anything. It just removes some pieces and then isolates for the Mauer ground, since part of their EDA will be TIF backed. So it really creates it as its own TIF instead of spreading outside of that property.
And just by way of reminder, these come before you for essentially approval that the plans that Nathan just went over conform to the plan of development for the town. So they're consistent with our comprehensive plan or other plans.
And this would have gone through RDC first, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So the process is it went through RDC, comes Plan Commission, Council, and back to RDC for final.
Okay.
So Hughes, we've had a few of these. Remind me, do we do the public portion? Follow
Yeah,
our same procedures on this?
You certainly can take, I mean, there's not really a petitioner. You certainly can take public comment at this time if anybody has any public comment on the item, and then close it just like we do the others and vote on it. It's not as, there's not a petitioner and remonstrators and all that. So.
And did I hear right? This is an I and a J, or is this an I?
I and J.
J.
Okay, so specifically I is.
So I is the Whitestown 2021 Millhouse TIF bond ordinance, and it reads, it's got a longer title. It's Order of the Town of Whitestown Plan Commission determining that a declaratory resolution and economic development plan for Whitestown Millhouse Little League Economic Development Area. And it goes on and on. That's the resolution. Be happy to share my screen if you guys want. You can just pop it up there for everybody. Jill, if you can give me that ability. There you go. Sorry.
So again, this divides an existing TIF area into two. and defines them more specifically with somewhat smaller land area.
Correct.
Thank you. Does anyone have any discussion? Is there anyone who's asked to speak on this item from the public? That's probably where we better start. Is there any public request to speak on this?
I didn't receive any on I or J.
I have received no comments.
Okay. Any discussion or motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Whitestown 2021 Millhouse TIF bond.
Second.
Motion a second. Any further discussion?
All right,
Brittany?
Matt Doublestein,
Aye.
Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Sarah Ford,
Aye.
Lauren Foley,
Aye.
Danny Powers,
Aye.
Dave Taylor.
Aye.
All right. And then item J. Steve, do you have that one? Could you project that too?
I sure can. This one's going to look very similar.
Mhm.
This one is for the home field 2021 TIF bond.
I'd like to express gratitude to my optometrist who helps me see these tiny little letters on the screen.
I can zoom it in if you need me to.
It'll help a little bit. Thanks. There we go. Oh,
On my screen, it looks good. It's hard to know what it looks like over there.
maybe one day we can all see each other's screen.
Maybe one day we can all be together again. That'd be nice. Wouldn't it?
That. Are there any requests to speak on this one?
I have not received any.
Okay. Comment, discussion, or motions from the commission?
I make a motion to approve Whitestown 2021 home field TIF bond.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Brittany?
Matt Doublestein,
Aye.
Andrew McGee,
Aye.
Sarah Ford,
Aye.
Lauren Foley,
Aye.
Danny Powers,
Aye.
Dave Taylor.
Aye.
That item passes as well. Are there any other items on our agenda this evening?
No.
All right.
I
Thank
will
you,
say though,
everyone.
since these two, with these two going through, I'm gonna send an email to all of the members. I will need signatures on these. So if you can stop by the building and I can get your signature in person, great. If not, I will be sending these out and we'll need your signatures so we can pass it to council.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for a long one. I think we need a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
and we can do this one together, right? All in favor? Aye.
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 Hey, Matt.
Oh, yes, sir.
Brittany. Quick, Brittany had mentioned that, and John can elaborate. We now have DocuSign. Are those items that can be done through DocuSign, Jonathan, or do they require ink signatures?
So yeah, I think you can use DocuSign if that's what everybody wants to do. There's kind of a big debate going on in the town municipal practice world, but I think it's okay. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, if that works, that's an option versus everyone having to drop by town hall. We have got DocuSign going. So Brittany, if you want to just get with Carly or Savannah, they can put that in their plate for you. So that's a board decision, but just sorry, they've already called to order. I was muted, so I was a little behind.
So I guess that's informal, although we're still recording. What do we need to do on that?
I suppose let's use DocuSign the next time and just use the same process we've used in the past, since that's what was on the record. We can use it in the future.
All right, thank you.
Just either come in or sign it and get it to Brittany.
All right, can do that. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.